What if everything you were taught about prayer is backwards? Joel Goldsmith discovered a secret so radical that even his closest students struggled to accept it. This isn't about asking, begging, or repeating affirmations until your mind goes numb. This is about a silence so profound it dissolves every problem without you lifting a finger. The secret: stop praying for things. Stop trying to change God's mind. Stop believing that your words have power to manipulate the universe. The moment you understand this, everything shifts. You stop being a beggar and become a witness to miracles that were always there, waiting for your recognition. Here's what Joel discovered in his deepest meditation. Prayer is not about speaking to God. It's about listening. It's about becoming so still that the divine presence reveals what already exists in spiritual reality. Your health is already perfect. Your abundance is already complete. Your peace is already established. The technique is shockingly simple. Sit in silence, release every desire, and wait. Not for an answer, not for a sign. Just wait in the awareness that God already is. This isn't passive. This is the most powerful spiritual practice on earth. Most people fail at this practice because they cannot tolerate the silence. They sit for 30 seconds and their mind screams with demands. I need money. I need healing. I need love. These aren't prayers. These are declarations of lack that push away the very thing you seek. Joel called this taking thought, and it's the enemy of transformation. True prayer begins when thinking stops. When you cease trying to inform God about your problems, as if the infinite intelligence needed your limited perspective. When you stop rehearsing your pain, your fear, your desperation. All of that is noise that blocks the still small voice within. Joel practiced this silence for years before he understood its power. He would sit, sometimes for hours, not asking, not visualizing, not affirming, just being. And in that sacred emptiness, healings happened. Tumors dissolved. Relationships restored. Money appeared from unexpected sources. Why does this work? Because you're no longer operating from human will. You've surrendered the ego's desperate need to control outcomes. You've stepped into the consciousness where miracles are natural, normal, and inevitable. Let me be direct about what to expect. This isn't instant magic. The first week you might sit in silence and feel absolutely nothing. Your mind will rebel. It will tell you this is a waste of time. It will seduce you back into traditional prayer, into asking, into trying to make things happen through mental force. Resist that temptation. The silence is working even when you feel nothing. You're breaking the habit of mental manipulation. You're training yourself to rest in spiritual reality instead of fighting material appearances. This process takes time because you're reversing years of conditioning. By week 3 or 4, something shifts. You'll notice a quality of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. Problems that seemed urgent lose their grip on you. Not because they disappeared, but because you've touched something deeper than problems. You've touched the changeless perfection beneath appearances. Joel taught that this practice isn't about fixing your human life. It's about awakening to your spiritual identity. The fixing happens as a natural consequence. When you know who you really are, the material world rearranges itself to match that knowing. Here's the part that shocks most people. You don't need faith for this to work. Faith implies doubt. Faith means you're hoping something will happen. In Joel's secret practice, you're not hoping. You're recognizing what already is. The sun doesn't need faith to shine. Water doesn't need faith to be wet. God doesn't need faith to be infinite. Your only job is to stop blocking the flow with your mental noise. Stop declaring what's wrong. Stop describing your problems. Stop begging for change. All of that reinforces the illusion of separation from your good. Instead, sit in wordless awareness that perfection is the only reality. This feels dangerous to the ego. It wants to do something, achieve something, prove something. But Joel discovered that the less you do, the more happens. The quieter you become, the louder the truth speaks. The more you release control, the more divine order manifests in visible form. Practice this today. 5 minutes of absolute silence. No words, no thoughts, no agenda. Just sit as awareness itself. Let everything be exactly as it is. This is the prayer that moves mountains. This is the secret Joel lived by. Martha was a teacher in Seattle who came to Joel's classes in the 1950s. She had ovarian cancer, stage 3. Doctors gave her 6 months. She tried every form of prayer she knew. Affirmations, visualizations, begging God for mercy. Nothing changed. The tumor grew. Her fear intensified. Then Joel taught her the silence. Stop praying for healing, he told her. Stop seeing yourself as sick. Sit in the awareness that God knows no disease. Martha thought he was insane. How could she not pray for healing when death was approaching? But she was desperate enough to try. For 3 weeks, she practiced. 20 minutes every morning, sitting in wordless silence. Not asking for healing, not visualizing health, just resting in the truth that spiritual perfection is the only reality. Her mind fought her constantly, but she persisted. On week 4, something shifted. Not in her body at first, but in her consciousness. She stopped feeling like a sick woman fighting disease. She felt like awareness itself, untouched by material conditions. 2 weeks later, her doctor found the tumor had shrunk by 40%. Robert was a businessman who lost everything in a bad investment. House foreclosed, marriage failing. Overwhelming sadness so deep he couldn't see a way forward. Every morning felt like drowning in darkness. He found Joel's recordings and heard about the secret practice. At first he dismissed it. How would silence pay his debts? But he had nothing left to lose. He began sitting for 15 minutes each morning, not praying for money, not visualizing abundance, just being still in the awareness that supply is infinite and ever-present. The first 2 weeks, nothing happened. His situation got worse. Creditors called daily. Week 3, something strange occurred. He stopped feeling desperate. The panic that had consumed him began to dissolve. He couldn't explain it. His circumstances hadn't changed, but his relationship to them had. He felt held by something larger than his problems. By week 6, opportunities began appearing. A former colleague offered him a consulting job. An unexpected tax refund arrived. Small amounts, but consistent. Within 4 months, he was financially stable. Within 8 months, he had saved more than he lost. The silence had reorganized his entire reality. Linda suffered from chronic migraines for 12 years. She tried every medical treatment, every alternative therapy. Nothing worked. The pain was so severe she couldn't work, couldn't function. She lived in darkness, literally and metaphorically. Then she discovered Joel's teachings on prayer. She started practicing the silence twice daily, morning and night, 20 minutes each. Not praying for relief, not asking God to remove the pain, just sitting in the awareness that perfect health is her true nature. The first month was brutal. The migraines continued. Her mind screamed that this was useless. But something, Joel said, kept her going. Don't judge by appearances. The spiritual work is happening beneath the surface. So she continued. Week 5, she had 1 migraine-free day, the first in 12 years. She cried with gratitude, but Joel would have told her not to celebrate too much. Celebration of material improvement keeps you focused on the material. She kept practicing, not because it was working, but because the silence itself became her refuge. By month 3, the migraines were gone. Completely. Her neurologist was baffled. Linda knew she hadn't healed a disease. She had awakened to the truth that disease never existed in spiritual reality. These aren't unusual cases. They're normal outcomes when you practice Joel's secret correctly. But notice the pattern. None of these people got instant results. All of them went through weeks of doubt. All of them faced the temptation to return to traditional prayer, to doing something instead of being still. The silence works because it shifts you from human effort to divine grace. You stop trying to manipulate reality and start aligning with it. You stop fighting conditions and start recognizing the perfection that exists beyond them. This isn't positive thinking. This is consciousness transformation. Joel spent decades teaching this, but most people never understood. They wanted techniques, formulas, steps to follow. But this isn't a technique. It's a way of being. It's learning to live from spiritual reality instead of reacting to material appearances. It takes practice, patience, and persistence. The question is, are you willing to sit in silence even when nothing seems to happen? Are you willing to trust that spiritual reality is working even when physical evidence contradicts it? Are you ready to stop being a beggar and become a witness to grace? This is the path Joel walked. This is the invitation before you now. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others find these teachings, subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom, and comment. What healing journey resonated most with you? Once you establish the foundation of silence, Joel taught a complementary practice, releasing judgment. Every time you label something as good or bad, you bind yourself to material appearances. Every time you declare, "This is a problem," you solidify the illusion. Judgment is the opposite of spiritual awareness. Start noticing how often you judge throughout the day. This is wrong. That's unfair. This shouldn't be happening. Every judgment is a prayer for more of what you're judging. It's a declaration that material conditions have power over you. Joel called this taking thought, and it's the main obstacle to transformation. The practice is simple. When you notice judgment arising, pause. Don't fight it. Don't judge yourself for judging. Just notice it, then return to silence. Return to the awareness that God's universe is perfect, even when appearances suggest otherwise. This doesn't mean accepting evil. It means seeing through the illusion. Practice this for 1 week alongside your silent prayer. Every judgment you release is a doorway opening to grace. Every moment you refrain from labeling creates space for truth to reveal itself. This compounds the power of your silence practice exponentially. The second complementary practice Joel taught, stop testifying to problems. Notice how often you rehearse your difficulties to others. I'm sick, I'm broke, I'm alone. Every time you speak these words, you're praying for their continuation. You're declaring them as truth. You're giving them power they don't actually have. This doesn't mean lying or denying facts. If you're experiencing pain, you acknowledge it to doctors. But you don't tell everyone you meet. You don't make it your identity. You don't rehearse the story over and over. Each repetition embeds the condition deeper into your consciousness. Instead, practice sacred silence about your challenges. When people ask how you are, keep your answer brief and neutral. Fine, getting through. Then change the subject. Not because you're hiding, but because you're refusing to testify to illusion. You're declining to give power to appearances. Joel lived this way. People would ask about his health challenges, and he'd deflect. Not because he was secretive, but because he wouldn't empower disease by discussing it. Within weeks of practicing this alongside your silent prayer, you'll notice. The less you talk about problems, the less power they have over you. The third practice, gratitude without conditions. Most people practice gratitude for things. Thank you for this meal. Thank you for this money. Thank you for this healing. But Joel taught something deeper. Gratitude for the isness of God. Gratitude that doesn't depend on circumstances changing. This is radical. Can you be grateful when you're still sick? When you're still broke? When you're still alone? Not grateful for the sickness, but grateful that underneath appearances, infinite perfection exists. Grateful that spiritual reality is untouched by material conditions. Grateful that God is, regardless of what seems to be happening. Practice this daily. Before your silent prayer, spend 2 minutes in pure gratitude, not for things you want or things you have, just gratitude for existence itself, gratitude for consciousness, gratitude for the breath moving through you, gratitude for the awareness that can notice gratitude. This practice dissolves the demanding energy that blocks grace. When you're grateful for what is, you stop trying to change what is. You stop fighting reality. You stop praying from lack. And in that surrender, transformation happens naturally, not because you made it happen, but because you stopped preventing it. These 3 practices work together powerfully. Silence opens the door. Releasing judgment clears the obstacles. Stopping problem testimony prevents reinforcement of illusion. Unconditional gratitude establishes receptivity. Together, they create the consciousness in which miracles are inevitable. But here's what Joel emphasized. Don't make these practices into new forms of trying. Don't approach them as techniques to get what you want. That's just the ego in spiritual clothing. Approach them as ways of aligning with truth. Ways of recognizing what already is. ways of being, not doing. Most people practice for 2 weeks and quit because they don't see results. They're still operating from what's in it for me consciousness. They're still treating spirituality as a vending machine. Insert prayer, receive goodies. But that's not how this works. This is about identity transformation, not circumstance manipulation. The practices work when you stop caring whether they work. When you practice because resting in truth feels better than fighting appearances. When you practice because silence is its own reward. When you release outcomes and embrace the process. That's when everything shifts. That's when you become living proof of Joel's secret. Let's address what Joel rarely discussed publicly, the dark night of practice. About 3 to 6 weeks in, most people hit a wall. They've been sitting in silence faithfully. Nothing has changed. In fact, circumstances might have worsened. The mind screams, "This isn't working, you're wasting your time. Go back to real prayer." This is the critical moment. This is where 90% of people abandon the practice. They interpret the lack of immediate results as failure. But Joel would say, this is exactly when the deepest work is happening. Your consciousness is being reorganized at a level you can't perceive. The silence is dissolving years of false belief. The challenge is staying committed when every logical part of you says to quit. When friends tell you you're being irresponsible by not doing something about your problems. When your own doubt becomes overwhelming. This is the test. This is where you discover whether you truly trust spiritual reality, or just like the idea of trusting it. Joel's advice for this phase: shorten your practice if needed, but don't stop. Even 5 minutes of silence daily maintains the momentum. Don't judge yourself for doubt. Don't try to force belief. Just show up, sit, be still. Let the process unfold in its own time. Transformation is happening even when you can't feel it. Another challenge Joel acknowledged: the practice brings up buried emotions. When you sit in silence, you're not just connecting with divine presence. You're also facing everything you've been avoiding. Old grief, suppressed anger, deep loneliness. The silence doesn't create these feelings. It reveals them. Many people interpret this as the practice making things worse. They were managing fine until they started meditating, and now they're falling apart. But Joel understood. This is healing. You can't transcend what you haven't acknowledged. The emotions aren't new. You've been carrying them while pretending they don't exist. The solution isn't to stop practicing. It's to let the emotions move through without attaching stories to them. Feel the grief without making it mean something about your worth. Experience the anger without directing it at anyone. Notice the loneliness without concluding you're unlovable. Just feel, just allow, just witness. This phase usually lasts 2 to 4 weeks. It's uncomfortable, but necessary. You're clearing the emotional debris that blocks your awareness of perfection. On the other side of this release, the silence becomes profoundly peaceful. You discover that underneath all the feelings, you are untouched, whole, complete. A third challenge: results that seem opposite to what you want. You practice for prosperity, and an unexpected bill arrives. You practice for health, and symptoms intensify. You practice for relationship harmony, and conflict erupts. Your mind interprets this as evidence the practice is harming you. But Joel taught, appearances can worsen before they improve because you're addressing the root cause, not the surface symptom. That unexpected bill might be clearing old energy. Those intensified symptoms might be the last gasp of false belief. That relationship conflict might be forcing honesty that leads to true intimacy. The key is not to react to worsening appearances by abandoning the practice. Don't make decisions based on fear during this phase. Keep sitting in silence. Keep recognizing spiritual perfection. Keep trusting that divine intelligence knows what's unfolding. This isn't blind faith, it's trained spiritual discernment. Joel experienced this himself. When he first began teaching, he lost students, lost income, faced criticism. It seemed like his practice was destroying his life. But he kept going. And on the other side, everything reorganized at a higher level. The temporary chaos was necessary for the breakthrough. Trust the process, even when logic argues against it. The final challenge Joel warned about: subtle spiritual pride. After a few months of practice, things improve. You feel more peaceful. Maybe a healing occurs or money appears. The ego whispers, "You're getting good at this. You're more spiritual than others. You've mastered something." This is dangerous. The moment you take credit for outcomes, you've left the consciousness of grace and returned to human effort. You've made yourself the power instead of recognizing you're simply a witness to divine action. Pride blocks further transformation because it reestablishes separation. Joel's remedy. Every time you notice improvement, immediately give credit to the infinite presence. Not as a religious gesture, but as accurate perception. You didn't heal yourself. You stopped blocking healing. You didn't manifest abundance. You stopped resisting the infinite supply that was always there. You're not powerful. You're transparent to power. This humility isn't self-deprecation. It's precision. It's seeing clearly that the human self has no power to transform anything. All power belongs to spiritual reality. Your job is simply to not interfere. Stay small. Stay humble. Stay in awe of the grace that operates through you, not because of you. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this content, subscribe for advanced spiritual practices, and comment, which obstacle are you ready to transform now? After 6 months of consistent practice, you'll face a new challenge: maintaining the silence in daily chaos. It's easy to sit peacefully in your morning meditation, but can you access that same silence when your boss is yelling, when your bank account hits zero, when your child is sick? This is where the practice becomes a living reality, not just a morning ritual. Joel called this practicing the presence throughout your day. It's not about constantly meditating. It's about maintaining an inner awareness of spiritual perfection, even while engaging with material responsibilities. You're cooking dinner, but underneath, you're resting in silence. You're paying bills, but deeper down, you're aware of infinite supply. The technique: set reminders on your phone every 2 hours. When the reminder sounds, pause for 10 seconds. Don't close your eyes or stop what you're doing. Just internally shift from doing to being, from thinking to awareness, from problem to presence. 10 seconds. Then continue your activities from that grounded space. This practice transforms everything. You're still handling responsibilities, but from a completely different consciousness. You're no longer driven by fear or urgency. You're no longer trying to make things happen through force. You're allowing divine order to move through your actions. This is how Joel lived. This is mastery. Advanced integration also means recognizing when to speak and when to stay silent. Joel taught that sometimes spiritual awareness requires taking action in the physical world. You don't sit in silence about medical care and refuse to see a doctor. You don't ignore financial obligations because you're practicing spiritual supply. That's not wisdom. That's spiritual bypassing. The key is taking action from spiritual consciousness, not from fear. You see the doctor, but you don't invest the doctor with ultimate power. You pay the bill, but you don't believe money is your source. You address the relationship issue, but you don't make the other person responsible for your peace. See the distinction? Joel practiced this constantly. He would refer students to physicians while simultaneously treating their cases spiritually. He would discuss practical financial matters while resting in the awareness of infinite supply. He engaged fully with the human experience without believing the human experience was ultimate reality. Practice this integration. When facing a practical decision, first sit in silence for 5 minutes. Let the urgency dissolve. Let the fear quiet. Then, from that centered space, take whatever action feels appropriate. Not action to fix a problem, but action as an expression of divine intelligence moving through you. Another aspect of advanced practice: dealing with other people's emergencies. Someone calls you in panic about their crisis. Your old pattern is to either absorb their fear or try to fix their problem. But Joel taught a different way. You listen with compassion while internally remaining in the silence. You see past their story to their spiritual perfection. This doesn't mean being cold or dismissive. It means holding space for their humanity while knowing their divinity. It means not buying into their narrative of limitation. It means silently recognizing the truth about them while they're telling you about their problem. This is the most powerful gift you can give anyone. You might offer practical help if appropriate. You might just listen. But underneath whatever you do externally, you're resting in the awareness that this person is already whole, already provided for, already healed. You're not trying to change them. You're seeing truly, and that seeing has power. Joel did this constantly. Students would pour out their troubles, and he would listen with perfect attention. But he wasn't absorbing their energy. He was holding the consciousness of perfection. Often, just being in his presence, people's problems would begin to dissolve. Not because he fixed anything, but because he refused to believe their story of limitation. The ultimate integration, living as if you're already who you're becoming. Not pretending, not faking, but genuinely resting in the truth that your spiritual identity is already perfect, already complete, already fully expressed. The human experience is slowly catching up to what's already true. This is subtle but revolutionary. Most people wait for circumstances to change before they allow themselves to feel peaceful, abundant, healthy. But Joel taught the reverse. Embody the consciousness first, and circumstances will rearrange to match. Be peaceful now, regardless of chaos. Be abundant now, regardless of your bank balance. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about recognizing which reality is ultimate. The spiritual perfection is real and permanent. The material appearance is temporary and shifting. You're choosing to identify with what's true rather than what's apparent. You're living from the inside out, not the outside in. Practice this today. Move through your activities as if you're already the person you're becoming. If you're treating for health, walk like a healthy person. If you're treating for abundance, make decisions like an abundant person. Not from ego, but from the quiet knowing that spiritual reality is more real than material appearance. This is living the secret. You've now practiced for months, maybe a year. Your life has transformed in ways you couldn't have predicted. Not because you manipulated outcomes, but because you stopped interfering with divine order. But here's what Joel would want you to understand. The transformation isn't about better circumstances. It's about a completely different identity. You no longer see yourself as a body that gets sick and needs healing. You see yourself as consciousness that cannot be touched by material conditions. You no longer see yourself as a person who needs money. You see yourself as an expression of infinite supply. You no longer see yourself as alone. You recognize you're eternally one with the source of all. This shift in identity changes everything. Not because you're getting what you want, but because you no longer want from a place of lack. You're no longer trying to become something. You're recognizing what you already are. The desperate seeking stops. The anxious striving ends. You rest in being. Joel spent his entire ministry trying to convey this. The point isn't to heal your body or improve your finances. The point is to wake up to who you truly are. And when you do, the body takes care of itself. The finances arrange themselves. Everything falls into place because you're no longer standing in the way with your human will. At this level of practice, prayer becomes your natural state. You're not praying at certain times. You're living in prayer. The silence isn't something you do for 20 minutes. The silence is who you are. You move through life from that inner stillness, and it radiates into everything you touch. People feel different around you, though they can't explain why. Your presence calms them. Your words carry weight. Not because you're trying to influence anyone, but because you've become transparent to something larger than yourself. You're not the power. You're the space through which power flows. This is what Joel embodied. Students would describe sitting in a room with him and feeling their problems dissolve without him saying a word. He wasn't doing anything to them. He was simply being what he was. Awareness resting in the truth of spiritual perfection. That consciousness is contagious. You don't have to be Joel to experience this. You just have to be willing to keep practicing beyond results, beyond improvement, beyond even transformation. Keep practicing until the practice disappears, and you're simply living as conscious awareness. That's the secret behind the secret. That's the destination Joel was pointing toward all along. Let's talk about what comes after transformation, because there's a subtle trap even here. Making transformation into a new goal, making enlightenment into another achievement, making spiritual mastery into ego food. Joel warned against this. the seeking never truly ends. It just becomes more refined, more subtle, more enjoyable. You don't arrive at a place where you've made it and can now coast. Every day you choose again. Every moment you return to the silence. Every situation you practice seeing truly. This isn't a burden, it's a joy. It's the most natural thing in the world once you stop fighting it. Some days you'll forget everything you've learned. You'll react from fear. You'll get caught in appearances. You'll try to force outcomes. This is normal. This is human. Joel had these moments too. The difference is, you now know how to return to center. You know the way home. The silence is always waiting. The practice becomes less about achieving something and more about being faithful to what you know. Faithful to the truth you've glimpsed. Faithful to the silence that has proven itself trustworthy. This faithfulness isn't effort. It's love. It's recognizing what has value and choosing it again and again. So, here you are. You know the secret Joel lived by. You know the practice that changes everything. You know the challenges you'll face and how to navigate them. You know what total transformation looks like and how to embody it. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Because knowledge without practice is useless. You can know everything about silence and never sit in silence. You can understand every principle and never apply a single one. Joel didn't teach information. He taught a way of life. He lived what he taught. He was the proof of his own message. Your invitation is the same. Become living proof, not to impress anyone, not to achieve anything, but because you've glimpsed something true, and you can't pretend you haven't. You've heard the call to a different way of being. You've felt the pull toward silence. You know deep down that this is your path. Start today. 5 minutes of silence. No words, no thoughts, no agenda. Just being, just presence. Just the awareness that beneath all appearances all is well. All has always been well. All will always be well. This is Joel's secret. This is your inheritance. This is the prayer that transforms everything without trying to change anything. If your spiritual understanding expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets, like this video, subscribe for more transformative teachings, and comment, "I am transformed," to confirm your new path.